unheard of. You never saw a computer back then. They were further out than rocket science. They were in places called research or the military. I knew that this was going to be the passion of my life. In my heart, I was going to study computers, learn ones and zeros, how to add them, how to make more decision devices for my entire life. Very early on, about when I was maybe 11 years old, I decided I wanted to build something with my little knowledge of logic. Logic were little devices like a light switch. Up is on and down is off. Simple little rules, simple little decisions. I looked at the game of tic-tac-toe. My father suggested it, that I could build a machine that would never lose the game tic-tac-toe. I sat down on paper for all day long, for 2 days straight, and played every version of tic-tac-toe that was possible. And I made a set of rules. The rules were how to make a move so you never lose. And then every one of those rules became a few little electronic parts, soldered to nails that I pounded into plywood. Big, huge device, and it played tic-tac-toe. Well, I look back and I think, how could someone that young build something so huge and amazing and valuable and smart? But at the time, I didn't even think of it. All I thought of it was, it's what I love doing. This is just the most fun thing for me in the world, and it makes me feel special. And I started becoming so good at electronics that, I became what they call a nerd, or a geek. And I was known as an electronic genius in school, but I didn't have many friends. I couldn't talk their language. I wasn't in the social groups. Didn't get invited to parties and that sort of thing. Okay, well, it just made my electronics more important to me. So it's often useful to look back and say, who is going to be a good, outstanding contributor in society, a good contributor to the world of technology? And very often, it's sometimes that person that was an outsider in the school, that was kind of shy, that had to do a lot of thinking for themselves, but really learn to believe in their own ideas, and they don't have to match the way other people think. The paradigm of school is something that we need to give attention to. You are taught the same pages as every other student in your class on Monday. You're taught the same pages on Tuesday, the same pages on Wednesday, the same pages on Thursday. You're all learning at the same time. If Johnny has a little problem, and I can't go back and correct it, because a few minutes later, Betty's going to have a little problem, and I can't go back and correct it for every single person. We don't have one teacher per student. We have one teacher per 30 students when we're young, when it matters. And that's a problem. And then we get tested on Friday, and a few people are outstanding, and they're the good ones that are going to go on in life, and the others feel like, I'm not that smart. And that's something we've got to think about changing someday. I imagine a school that you can go to and say, I want to choose, my grade is straight A's. I will come out as knowledgeable as anyone, but I might go in different directions than the other people, and I might go at different speeds. And I'm hopeful that someday computers will be a part of that paradigm shift. So far, computers in schools just are a tool that we use to do school the normal way. But I'll talk later on about how computers are going to fill that role someday. In school, you're taught that the right answer, you are good if you have the same answer that everyone else has. That is the correct answer. The problem is, it's not your own answer. It's an answer out of a book. It belongs to someone else. And you sort of learn through school and school and school that there's always an answer in a book, and you just have to find it. You don't get taught very much to think hard and come up with an answer that is not in the book. That's the sort of thinking that we overlook, and yet that's the sort of thinking that is called creativity and leads to innovation and new ways of thinking and new products in our lives. Early on, I told my father I felt that education was so important a part of life to giving us the tools we needed to have a job and have money coming in and have a family and a home. And I said, I'm going to be an engineer first in my life, and I'm going to be a teacher second, a 5th grade teacher. 10-year-old kids, like when I was so important, 11-year-old kids. It was such an important time in my life, and these teachers meant so much. And I asked my father, did the teachers get paid more than engineers? And he said no. I was disappointed. But all through my life, I kept in my head, I want to be a teacher of young children who need good teachers, need to be inspired, need to be motivated. And eventually I did go back and I wound up teaching for 8 years. Secretly, no press, little's known about that. One thing we're not taught at school is to be skeptical, to question a teacher. We'll be called disruptive. We will learn how to calculate when two canoes meet on a river, but if we say, no, rivers aren't really the right speed, they never go the same speed, sorry, you're disruptive. Don't speak up, little John, don't say that sort of thing. And we're often encouraged not to explore. There's 30 kids in a class. We can't all go off in our own directions. I want to know what's in that drawer, and somebody else wants to know what's under the building, and somebody else wants to, look behind a little cabinet. Well, we can't, because control has to be maintained. And it all boils down, when you think about class size, if you don't have one teacher per student, it all boils down to lack of money. It can be solved with money, but it's unlikely to be solved with money because families with children want schools that are good. And families without children don't want to pay for them. And there's a lot more families that don't have children. And money, in any democratic society, the money for schools comes from a government. Has to be, because education's a right for all. If it comes from the government, the amount of money that the government gives to anything is proportional to votes. A family of 5 with 3 kids gets no more votes than a family of 2. And that's where the problem lies. Someday I hope that changes too. So school does teach us some fundamental schools. And I've got to say that for almost everybody, some levels of arithmetic are very important to be making judgments and estimates of things that are going to happen all through our lives. We can apply these skills to things that are way outside of what we learn in school at later points in our life. When I was in high school, I had a teacher that said you can go beyond the school. He was an electronics teacher. We had the most incredible electronics program of any high school probably in the world. We had better equipment and better courses than the local colleges. And we had it because of one great teacher who wrote the course himself. He didn't rely on books to teach electronics. He knew his class of students. He knew where our brains were, what we knew, what equipment we had, and he wrote the course based around that. What he also arranged for some of us every year that were very bright, 1 or 2 of us, to go into industry. He made industry connections. And he arranged for me to get to go down to a company and program something called a computer. What's a computer? We didn't have those in school. So I got to go and write programs for a computer. Oh my God, I felt like Superman. Of course, nobody in the school knew me. They didn't know what I was doing. This was the thing of my life, understanding what computers were. One of the first programs I wrote was a chess program called The Knight's Tour of Chess, where the knight hits every square once, and nothing came out. And I scratched my head, and the next week I printed out chessboards, and I decided my program was working perfectly. And it was going to get to the answer, but it was going to take 10 to the 25th years. Longer than the universe has been around. So, what that taught me was this computer that could do 1 million things a second. 1 million, huge, unbelievably fast, couldn't calculate a simple little problem that humans have been able to solve. It couldn't solve that problem based on speed. We need the human mind to come up with methods of solving problems. To this day, we still need the human mind. No computer program has ever come close to the human mind in saying, here's a problem, how can I go about solving it? Not yet. That hasn't happened yet. So we still need the intuition to think about how to solve these problems, that come from the human brain. We don't know how the brain's wired. We really don't have a clue. It's not like a television where you can actually go in and see every little wire and figure out how it's made. I discovered Computer Manual that year. Computer Manual is like architecture. The architecture of the building we're in would be described